On the outside, everything seemed fine. He had a steady job, friends who laughed with him, a family that cared, even if they didn't always understand him. To anyone looking from the outside, he looked like someone who had his life together. But inside was a different story. There was an emptiness he couldn't explain, a silent ache that grew a little stronger with each passing day. It was like he was wearing a mask, a perfect smile hiding the storm raging within. Every morning he would put on that mask, go out into the world and pretend that he was okay, pretend that he was happy, pretend that he wasn't drowning. No one knew how often he fought silent battles in the middle of the night. How many times he asked himself, is this all there is? How often he looked at his reflection and saw someone he barely recognized anymore. He tried to fill the void with distractions, work, hobbies, endless scrolling on his phone, anything to avoid facing the truth. But the truth was relentless. No matter how much noise he surrounded himself with, the silence inside him screamed louder. There was something missing, something no success, no relationship, no material thing could satisfy. Deep down, he felt disconnected, not just from the world, but from himself and from God. And without even realizing it, he was slowly falling deeper into a pit that appearances alone could no longer cover. It happened on a night that felt colder than any winter, not because of the weather, but because of the loneliness that wrapped around him like a heavy blanket. He sat alone in his room, the lights off, the silence deafening. The weight on his chest felt unbearable. Every disappointment, every failure, every unanswered question came crashing down all at once. It wasn't just sadness anymore. It was a deep, aching hopelessness, a sense that no matter how hard he tried, he would never truly escape this invisible prison he was trapped in. Tears began to fall, unstoppable and raw. He didn't even try to wipe them away. For the first time in a long time, he stopped pretending. He let himself feel the full depth of his brokenness. He wondered if anyone would even notice if he disappeared. He questioned his own existence, his worth, his future. And worst of all, he wondered if God had abandoned him too. He wasn't angry, he was just tired. Tired of pretending, tired of carrying a weight he didn't understand, tired of waking up every day feeling like he was losing a battle no one else could see. That night, he wasn't just lost. He was at the very bottom, the place where all the noise stops and only the raw truth remains. He couldn't save himself, and in that painful realization, a tiny seed of surrender was planted, a seed that would soon grow into the miracle he desperately needed. In the darkest corner of his room, with no strength left to fight, he did the only thing he could. He prayed. It wasn't a long, eloquent prayer. It wasn't a prayer filled with perfect words. It was a whisper, a broken cry from a broken heart. God, if you can hear me, if you still care, please help me. There was no expectation, no dramatic moment where the clouds parted and light filled the room. Just silence and a few more tears. But something unseen shifted in that moment, because even the smallest, most desperate prayer, when it's honest, has the power to move heaven. He didn't know it yet, but that simple prayer was the beginning of his rescue. It was the spark that would ignite a fire of hope deep within him. It was the first true act of surrender, and God had been waiting for it. Sometimes miracles don't start with a shout. They start with a whisper that reaches farther than we can imagine. And in that fragile prayer, he unknowingly opened the door for the impossible. The next morning, something felt different. Not everything was fixed. The heavy feelings didn't vanish instantly, but there was a subtle shift, almost like the first crack of dawn after the longest night. As he went about his routine, a message popped up on his phone. It was from an old friend he hadn't spoken to in years. The message was simple, just a, "Hey, thinking about you. Hope you're okay." But to him, it felt like a rope being thrown into a deep well. Coincidence? Maybe. But something inside told him it wasn't. Later that day, at the coffee shop he visited out of habit, a stranger smiled at him and said, "You know, sometimes the hardest storms lead to the brightest mornings." Again, just a random moment. Or was someone trying to tell him something? By the end of the day, he started to sense it. He wasn't invisible. He wasn't forgotten. There was something, or someone, reaching out to him. The signs weren't loud. They weren't spectacular, but they were real. And for the first time in what felt like forever, a small flicker of hope began to glow in his heart. It wasn't over. Something was happening. As the hours turned into days, he realized something profound. God was moving, even when he couldn't see it clearly. Tiny moments that once seemed random now felt intentional. Small blessings, unexpected encouragements, sudden shifts in his thoughts, all weaving together like threads in a tapestry he didn't yet understand. He began to notice how strangers would say exactly what he needed to hear, how old memories of better times would resurface just when he was about to give up, how songs, conversations, even simple sights on the street seemed to carry a message meant just for him. It was as if heaven itself was whispering, "Keep going. You're not alone. I'm working even when you can't see it." This invisible movement didn't erase all his problems instantly, but it gave him something even more powerful, the strength to hope again. He realized that faith isn't about always seeing clear evidence. It's about trusting that even in the silence, even in the darkness, something good is unfolding, something worth waiting for. And so he kept moving forward, one fragile step at a time, trusting that the God who heard his prayer was working behind the scenes, orchestrating something far greater than he could imagine. Exactly 3 days after that desperate prayer, something extraordinary happened. It didn't come with flashing lights or a dramatic voice from the sky. It came in the form of alignment, moments that, on their own, might seem small, but together formed a clear and undeniable answer. First, he received a call offering him a new job opportunity, one he hadn't even applied for. It was exactly the kind of fresh start he had been secretly longing for, but had been too broken to chase. Then, a family member he had grown distant from reached out, asking for forgiveness and offering unconditional support. A relationship he thought was lost forever suddenly started to heal. And that same afternoon, while walking through a park just to clear his mind, he stumbled upon an event he didn't even know was happening. A gathering of people sharing stories of faith, hope, and miraculous turnarounds. He stood there, watching, listening, at first from a distance, then drawn closer by a quiet pull inside him. One of the speakers said words that struck him deep. Sometimes it only takes 3 days for God to turn your story around. Don't give up before your miracle shows up. His heart pounded. He knew those words were for him. They were too specific, too timely to be mere coincidence. 3 days, exactly 3 days, from despair to hope, from silence to answers, from death inside, back to life. It wasn't just luck. It wasn't random. It was a response from a God who had been listening all along. And standing there, surrounded by strangers but feeling closer to heaven than ever before, he realized his rescue had already begun. As he stood quietly among the crowd, taking in the stories of redemption and hope, a man approached him, someone he had never seen before. The man looked him straight in the eyes and without hesitation said, "You are not forgotten. You are deeply loved, and your story is just beginning." That sentence pierced through every wall he had built around his heart. It shattered the lies he had been believing, that he was alone, that he was abandoned, that he was beyond saving. He didn't know how this stranger knew exactly what he needed to hear. He didn't know why those words felt so heavy with meaning. But deep inside, he recognized the voice behind the voice. It wasn't just a man speaking. It was God, reaching directly into his broken heart. Tears welled up in his eyes, but this time they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of healing, tears of relief, tears of being seen. In that single moment, his entire world shifted. The darkness that had consumed him began to lift. The weight he had carried for so long started to crumble. He realized that one simple prayer, whispered in his weakest moment, had unleashed a flood of grace he could never have imagined. He wasn't lost anymore. He was found. and his life was about to take a direction more beautiful than anything he had planned. The changes didn't happen overnight, but from that moment on, something inside him was undeniably different. It wasn't just about feeling better, it was about becoming new. He began to wake up each morning with a sense of purpose. He didn't have all the answers, and life wasn't suddenly perfect. But he had a new foundation, faith, hope, and a deep, unshakable sense that he was no longer walking alone. He started making small changes, but these small changes built momentum. He spent more time in prayer, not out of obligation, but because he wanted to stay connected to the God who had rescued him. He began reading scripture, discovering promises that he realized had been waiting for him all along. Old habits that once held him captive began to lose their power. Thoughts of defeat and despair were slowly replaced by thoughts of victory and possibility. He found himself reaching out to people he once pushed away, forgiving past wounds, repairing broken relationships, and building new ones based on honesty and grace. And most importantly, he no longer felt the need to wear a mask. He could be real. He could be vulnerable, because he knew now that his worth wasn't based on appearances. It was based on the love of a God who saw him at his worst and chose to lift him higher. His transformation wasn't just about external circumstances. It was a rebirth of the soul, a quiet revolution from the inside out. And with each passing day, he was becoming the person he was always meant to be. As his heart healed and his faith grew stronger, a new desire began to rise within him, not just to live differently, but to make a difference. He realized his story wasn't just for him. It was meant to be shared. It was meant to be a light for others who were still trapped in darkness, just as he had been. He started opening up to people about what he had been through. At first it was terrifying, exposing wounds he had hidden for so long. But every time he shared, something amazing happened. Someone else would say, "I thought I was the only one." Someone else would find hope through his honesty. His pain became a bridge. His testimony became a weapon against despair. His past, once a source of shame, now carried purpose. He volunteered at shelters. He spoke in small groups. He encouraged friends who were struggling, not with empty words, but with the genuine compassion of someone who had lived through the valley and come out the other side. And with every life he touched, his own healing deepened. Because when you bring light to others, your own world shines brighter too. He understood now that redemption isn't just about being saved. It's about becoming a vessel through which others can be saved as well. This was his new mission, to live as proof that no matter how lost someone feels, one prayer, one honest cry for help can change everything. Now, it's your turn. Maybe you're watching this and feeling the same way he once did. Lost, broken, tired of pretending everything's okay when deep down, you're not. If that's you, know this: you are not forgotten, you are not invisible, and you are not beyond hope. Right here, right now, you can take the same first step he did. You don't have to know all the right words. You don't have to have your life together. You just have to be honest. If you're ready, I invite you to pray with me. God, I don't have all the answers. I feel lost. But I believe you see me. I believe you love me. I believe you have a plan for my life, even if I can't see it yet. Please meet me where I am. Heal my heart. Guide my steps. Show me that you are real. I surrender everything to you. Amen. It may seem like a small moment, but just like it did for him, this could be the moment that changes everything for you. Your miracle could be closer than you think. It might even be just 3 days away. Don't give up before your breakthrough. Hold on. Hope is alive, and it's reaching out to you right now. If this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Someone you know might be silently fighting the same battles. Someone you love might be waiting for a sign that hope still exists. Share this message, be that sign for someone else, and if you haven't yet, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and join this community of faith, healing, and hope. Remember this: you are just one honest prayer away from your miracle. Keep believing, keep hoping, keep walking, even when you don't see the path yet. Because sometimes, in just 3 days, God can turn everything around.